Hi everyone, this is Jim. Over the Labor Day weekend, I played in the 68th annual Oregon Open, and I had a pretty good time there, and I thought I would share my games from that tournament. This is the first time I've played in the Oregon Open, so let me say a few words about it. It's a 6 round tournament played over 3 days. They did have a 2 day option, but I took the 3 day option, and it seemed like most people did. So 2 games per day. The time control was 40 moves in 2 hours, followed by a game in 30 minutes, say 2.5 hours, with a 10-second delay for each move. So you had a pretty relaxed time control. There were 3 sections. There was the open section, there was the under 2000, and there was the under 1600. So the under 2000 section where I was playing is effectively a Class A and Class B section combined. It was a pretty good turnout. There were 56 players in my section. About half of them were kids and half of them were adults. So a nice mix of different age levels. And I think I'll talk some more about the tournament at the end. Maybe do a little bit of a travel log. But let's get to the game. I guess. Oh, one thing I did want to mention was that in the open section they did have one grandmaster playing, as well as a couple of FIDE masters or international masters, and that was Jim Tarjan, who lives in that area now. So it was interesting to see him, famous player from the 70s. Okay, so let's get to my first game. My rating for this tournament was 1834, and my opponent was a high school kid whose rating was 1621. I actually didn't know the ratings at the time I played the games because they didn't, in the pairing sheets, they didn't put up the ratings. So I was playing all of these games without knowing the rating of my opponent, but I thought I would let you guys know. Anyway, he started off with knight f3. I went knight f6. He went c4. I went c5. So typical English opening. He goes knight c3. And I could play the 4 knights here, but I always play this line with d5. That's my idea of how to play against the English. It's not always the best move, but it's usually playable, and it guarantees that there's at least one half-open line, which is what I am going for. Now he played a rare move here. Normally white takes. That's 99% of the time. That's the best move here. Just take. And then I take back, so I've got my half-open line. And then there's different ways for white to play here. White can continue with g3. White can continue with d4. Let's see, after d4, I would probably play e6. And after g3, you get a similar kind of setup, g3, knight c6, bishop g2, and e6. So these are all comfortable positions for black to play in my experience. I've had them before. There is one kind of interesting line here. You see sometimes instead of g3 or d4, playing e4, and the knight. It's important to remember the knight goes to this b4 square when this happens, and then plays knight d3 check, and usually the knight gets traded off. Anyway, it's a kind of a funny position. White has a lead in development and an odd pawn structure, and black should be okay in this line as well. So those are the ways that it's played at the top levels. My opponent played the rare move d4 here, and I think it's rare because it's not... well, I think black kind of equalizes here. Actually, I could play e6 here and transpose into a Tarrasch defense, a semi-Tarrasch. But anyway, I take here. I think that's the more logical thing to do, having played in this move order. And he has to take here. This is the only line that works out okay for white. And he was taking his time. My opponent was moving pretty cautiously in the opening, so he wasn't one of these kids that just slams out the moves. And he figured this out. So this is the way to reach some kind of equality. There is a funny line here pointed out by the chess engine. It likes it at first for black, but after a while I think it realizes this is also kind of equal, and that is to play the move e5. I guess the point is that at the moment black is a pawn down. Is that right? No, white is not a pawn down. Yeah, maybe this is a pawn sack line because he can grab here, then take the knight. Oh, because I get this pawn back. So if we count at the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, the pawns come out even at the end, and I'm hitting the knight. The knight drops back, and I can hold on to this pawn. And yeah, like I said, at first the chess engine likes this, but you know, my development is good, and I have this advanced pawn, but it is isolated, and black can play. I mean, white has chances to play against it as well. So after a while, I think it thinks that position is about equal. Anyway, that idea didn't really occur to me. I just took the knight off and took the pawn, and then he grabbed his pawn back, and I didn't really see anything better than trading queens. I mean, I can avoid the queen trade, move my queen around, but I just didn't see that leading anywhere. So I went ahead and took the queens off and played bishop to d7. I wanted to keep his knight from hopping in. I guess to that square would be maybe a little bit annoying. So I thought this would be okay for me, and I think it is, but it's probably just in the range of about equal. So I think nobody's really made any mistakes here, but white has definitely shown a tendency to trade here, and it's even more more accentuated here when I play knight c6. He just took the knight off, which there was really no need for that, and then played bishop f3. So we get quite a simplified position here. Maybe he was thinking that he just trades down and goes for the draw against the higher rated player. I don't know. Maybe he likes these kind of endgame positions. But black should be okay here. Let's see. I played bishop to b4 check. Of course, it might be tricky if I am, let's see. I did e5. Oh, he did bishop e3. That's right. It's his move. I did bishop b4 check. I was about to say it might be kind of tricky for black if I was forced to play for a win, because there's no there's no clear winning idea here. I just have to keep playing and see what happens. This bishop b4 check is okay, but actually king f2, the move he played, is a good move anyway. It's given by the chess engine. Say if I had played bishop d6 instead, the chess engine gave king f2 as a good move. I mean, he wants to get his king off the back rank. It's relatively secure there, and it's out of the way of his bishops so that he can develop. And I castled here. I could consider doing something likewise. I could have played a move like king e7, and that's probably better than what I played, although, well, we'll see. I actually get into a little bit of trouble here after castling. So maybe castling isn't the immediate problem, but it sort of leads to some difficulties later. So he plays bishop to c4 here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, bringing the other bishop out. Bishop to c4. Pinning the f-pawn. And so it's a little bit annoying already. I played rook to c8. Now, I'm being a little bit clever here. I am leaving this pawn hanging. You know, he has a little pressure on these pawns, but if he takes it, then I have a desperado here. I can take the pawn on e4, and then he should defend his bishop or move it, and then I can retreat my bishop. One kind of cute line that I saw during the game is that if he tries to rescue this bishop and stay a pawn up by taking here, then I can take back with the rook, and the rook pins this pawn, and now my bishop is safe, and I'm a piece up. So that would backfire. But like I said, he could just defend his bishop, and I could retreat mine. And so it's been a trade of pawns. But the point is that when I played rook a to c1, I knew I was leaving that pawn hanging, and I had that idea to defend it. But my opponent was not tempted to play anything tricky. He just defended his bishop, and then I played a6, and to get that pawn out of the line of fire. He played a3, kicking my bishop back, and then rook h to d1. So very logical play from white, and I can't say that either side has made a mistake. It's been about even. Well, since the opening, you know, white should have really taken my pawn on d5 in the opening, but since then the game has been in the range of about even. But my next move is a mistake. So I wanted to get in this f5 move and try and get some pressure on the center, and to play that, I couldn't play it because of the pin, so I actually went king h8. And this is one of those reasons why the king on e7 might have been a better choice than putting the king over here on the king side. It was a bit of a tough decision because with two rooks and two bishops, that's 16 points of force. So by the rule of 14, the king is not quite safe to be wandering around the board. But on e7, it was probably pretty safe. So especially with this bishop on the dark squares guarding against checks, it was probably okay. Anyway, so now my king is moving in the wrong direction for the endgame. And there's another problem here, which I'll leave that to you to think about. He played rook to c3, just preparing to double his rooks. And now I realize that I can't play f5, the move I wanted to play. You want to think about this as your little tactics quiz for you. What's wrong with that f5 move? Okay, I'm giving the answer away now. Yeah, if I had played f5, he could just take it. And if I keep taking, that's kind of the position I was going for. I wanted to look forward to pushing this pawn forward and destroying his structure a little bit more in this open file for my rook. But this is a nasty little fork here, and so I can't really play that f5 move except as a pawn sack, and it's not worth it as a pawn sack. So I went f6, which actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's sort of continuing in my previous error. I moved my king out of the way so I could move the f-pawn, so I went ahead and moved the f-pawn even though I couldn't move it to f5. I should really rethink the whole thing. I need to find a way to get my king out of the box. Maybe g6 is an idea instead of f6. Because f6 doesn't really help my king, right? His bishop is still guarding the squares that the king has to go across. Anyway, it does do one thing. It shores up the center here, so this pawn is very solid now. So wasn't too bad a mistake. The big mistake was really the king h8 move. And now white. I can't say white is winning here, but white has some annoying pressure. He's got doubled rooks on the c file. He's already threatening to take on a6, just takes there and wins the bishop here. And even if I move the rook out of the way, he's still threatening to take there because if I take back with the pawn, my bishop is hanging. So I have to actually move my rook all the way to a8 to defend the pawn. Now I played bishop to d5. So continuing in this vein of trading, I thought maybe this was a mistake, but it's hard to say. The chess engine rates it as one of the top choices, so I guess I can't really call it a mistake. He could have just played a move, yeah, as I was showing there. He could have just played a move like king e2, brought the king in. That's maybe a little more, a safer way for white to play. This is a bit risky because he's going to end up with an isolated pawn after this. He sort of forces the exchange. If the bishop moves away, I lose the b pawn, and I can't defend it. Yeah, he can just take it if I try to defend it. Don't have enough force to defend it. So the trade is pretty much forced, and then he's got this advanced pawn that I can blockade. And this blockading bishop is a pretty good piece. It also is keeping an eye on the c7 square. And there is, however, a good move for white here where he can continue to exploit his advantages. He's got a passed pawn, he's got control of the c file, and yeah, so this is a good position for white. And a very interesting move here is bishop to d6. That's probably the move he should have played. Now that I was looking up, I was thinking about ways to defend. I probably would have played this move, rook f7, because I want to avoid things showing up here on c7 and him gaining control of the 7th rank there, especially with my king all the way over here. But it's difficult to defend, and he could continue with this move, bishop to c7. And I didn't really have a good answer for this. I probably would have played this way. I probably would have taken and this is probably a winning endgame for white. My king is out of the way. I can't even come over here and attack this pawn because my king is going to get mated on the back rank. So I have to start by, well, I could start with either move, but say I start with king g8 so that I'm not getting trapped on the back rank. Then that gives white time to bring his king forward. I can put my rook in front of the pawn. His king can come up here and defend it, and this pawn is hanging. I mean, I can play b5. The game continues, but this is, with good play, this is a winning end game for white. So that's how white should have played that. Now, just to give the chess engine perspective on this, there actually does seem to be a way to defend. So after bishop to b6, the chess engine liked this rook f7 idea. After bishop c7, however, it would just drop this bishop back. Now, this is a tough move to play, but I guess I can set up some kind of blockade like this. I'm not sure that's the idea. I just pointed out that the chess engine says I'm not really lost, so it doesn't flag bishop to b6 as the best move. But that's the chess engine perspective. It would be tough to find that defense, and I think that in a practical game, bishop to b6 is the best move there for sure. He played bishop to c5. So this is just continuing in that mode of trying to trade pieces off. And that gives me time to get a little better organized here. I played with rook to d8, defending the bishop. And now he went bishop to b6. He still could have gotten a good endgame here by just taking and bringing his rook into c7. This is also good for white. Maybe not as good as the other line, but still white's definitely preferable. Instead, at this point, he kind of switched gears and played bishop to b6 at this point. But now I have rook to d7, and I think I'm out of danger at this point. So it was a close call where white had some kind of winning edge there. Let's see, he continued with rook c8. I brought my king one step closer to the center. Let's see, he brought his king in. And then I pushed f5. I want to keep his king from getting into these squares. And that f5 move that I wanted to play previously, I finally managed to get it in. At this point, he traded rooks. And now for sure I'm okay, and I'm starting to think maybe I'm a little bit better, because now white has to worry about this isolated pawn becoming a weakness. And now my king is close enough to the center that I can come in and defend my pieces. And white's next move seems to be going downhill with bishop to c5. Chess engine thinks that you should just leave the bishop there and just bring the king around. And this would be a long game, but probably still in the range of about even. If he gets his king up to defend this pawn before I can attack it, he's probably okay. So this bishop to c5 move instead of king d3 is offering the trade once again. And actually, I should just take the trade. This is a good endgame for me. I take, he takes, and then I bring my king in. And something like this happens in the game, so I won't show the endgame ideas here, but I'll show it in the actual game. So after bishop c5, what I did was I played king e7 first. Not quite as accurate, because it gives him a few more options. But he played b4 here. For one thing, he could have moved his bishop back to b6 and avoided the trade. And now at this point, I decided to take the bishop off. I realized that when I take the bishop here, he might like to take with the pawn, but his e-pawn is still hanging, so he has to take with the rook. And then I can play king d6. But you can see that this position is very similar to the other line I showed you, except that he managed to get in this b4 move. But it's my move here anyway. So I play king d6, and this seems to be winning for black. I think it's no longer possible for white to defend this position. He tried f4, and we'll show what happened there. But he could try, waiting with the move like king d3. I'm going to play this move rook c7, which is also what I played in the game. One point is he can't defend that rook with his king, because I can just kick the king away, trade rooks, and then grab a pawn, and that's winning. Actually, I'm winning 2 pawns there, because he won't be able to defend the c pawn either. So he can't defend the rook. He has to take his rook. It doesn't want to run away to the side. That would also be pretty bad. Let my king in, my rook in, and attack from behind. Oh, also, oh no, not yet. Not yet giving up that pawn, but I could come from behind and start attacking. Anyway, so he takes, I take, and then this kind of endgame is winning for me, and we will also get to this in the actual game. So I just wanted to point it out that this is also a winning endgame. His king just doesn't have enough squares to get to hold on to this pawn. I can chase his king away from here and take this pawn. So anyway, in this position, instead of moving his king, he played f4. And I've just pushed on with e4. This gives me a passed pawn here for the endgame. He went g4, g6, he went h3, and now I went rook c7 with the same idea. So he trades, I trade, and he plays his king to d4. So getting his king to a good square. But it's important to know now that his king can't ever come forward. So by playing f4, he encouraged me to move my pawn forward, and he gained a couple of squares that his king can go to defend the pawn. But the problem in the long run is that I can take this square away by playing b4, and that's what is going to happen. Let's see, he went king d4, I went king d6, and then he went g5. I was a little worried at this point. I was planning to use some Zugzwang technique, and so I was planning, I was relying on having some reserve moves over here on the king side. But then I realized I have reserve moves with my king. I can move my king around amongst these four squares, and his mobility is limited. He can't come forward because I will queen with this pawn, so he's got to be moving back, and I can take this square away. So that's how I can win this endgame. Let's see. So I just played the move king e7 here. Started this. Basically, I'm just waiting with my king and encouraging him to find moves. Let's see. He went king e3. I went king d7. He went king d4, and I went b5. So now I've taken away those two squares. So his king can only go to these dark squares here. Can't come forward. Once again, I queen the pawn. So let's see. He went king c3 this time. I just keep waiting. He played h4. I just keep waiting. And finally, he gave up and played d6. Now, just to show what's going on here, if he steps forward with the king, the reason I'm waiting here one step behind is then I step forward with my king, and then he has to go back, and I can take the pawn. And that's one point. The second point is that if he doesn't move the pawn or step forward with the king, he has no other pawn moves, and he has to step back with the king. And he can't go to this square. That square has been taken away from him. So he has no square that he can go to that will allow him to defend this pawn when I attack it. So I step forward, he runs up to defend it, and I'm just quicker. So I win that pawn in any case. So it's just this shortage of moves here for his king has turned into a fatal weakness. So he played d6, I take, and then he blockades, but it's just for a moment. I move my king to the side, and once again he can't come forward, can't move to the side, he has to go back. And so he just resigned at this point. It's pretty straightforward. Endgame with the extra pawn and my king breaking through with these Zugzwang type moves, forcing him back. So interesting game, and a bit lucky in the sense that I was definitely in trouble. I made a couple of mistakes in the middle there, let white get an edge, but fortunately for me, he wasn't able to capitalize on it, and in the end game, he made the mistake, and I was able to convert. So a good start for the tournament for me, and stay tuned. I'll be back with round 2 coverage. See you then. Bye.